All right. Well, today is back to school day where I'm from, college level. And it reminded me of the dilemma that students face sometimes going to college, which is basically how do you pay for it? And of course, a few things to note: prices are higher than ever. Tuition's almost always going up, seems like. I've never seen a reduction, don't believe. And you don't really see reductions in prices anywhere in the broad spectrum of the economy. So that's one thing to note. But how do students pay for it? Well, the name of the game at most colleges, unfortunately, is student loans. I'll challenge you to think about the potential scam in the industry when you're going to a college that's overpriced, that doesn't have good job or fake job placement numbers, and then piles on the student loans to pay for that. So you end up with all this money you owe, but not a way to make income to pay it back, leaving you in the hole financially. And all you have to do is YouTube the stuff to see story after story of such situations. So fundamentally in the economy, I'm going to say what's not popular with the experts because it has a deflationary effect on the markets and no one wants that at the upper levels, but prices tend to be too high. Who can really afford anything anymore without debt? Whether you're trying to get an education or buy a car or house or pay a medical bill or even go shopping. How many vendors, when you walk in the door, try to push financing in your face? That way you don't look at the prices and you don't walk out discouraged because, hey, a low monthly payment and you can do it and have everything you want. Who cares if you're strapped month to month, paycheck to paycheck financially the rest of your life? What vendor cares about that as long as you make your payments and they made their sale? And everybody supposedly walks away happy except your checkbook. So well, in today's world, your bank app, however you manage your money. So I remember helping my grandmother balance her checkbook. Boy, that was back in the day. Now everything's on the app. But the point is, and I hope you have an app to do easier banking, but my challenge to you is to find cheaper prices across the board. In an earlier recording, I mentioned, I had ideas of how to save money across the board. Any topic you want to take on of the five big that I just mentioned: house, car, education, shopping, and medical. So let's take one of the hardest ones first, medical. And I'm dealing with this now actually, is making sure you have insurance, making sure that your expenditures are in network, making sure that you have savings to cover your deductible and any out-of-pocket expenses. For me, that's a $3,000 deductible plus another $2,000 I would pay in my portion of payments before I hit $5,000, at which insurance should pay 100%. So basically, if I have $5,000 on reserve, knowing that about my insurance coverage, then I've got enough money to get through that without owing a lot of debt. And of course, then one of your next steps is being willing to go on payments instead of paying it all up front, negotiating with the hospital to see if there's a better opportunity or if you have a pay cash option that saves you a little bit off the bill. And at the end of the day, if you ever did end up in collections, you can negotiate with them as well. And sometimes you just tell someone, I don't have it. Will you take a small monthly payment? Because that's all you're going to get. In love and kindness, the reality is, again, with prices being so high, sometimes you have to, especially with medical. But anyway, make sure before you go to a hospital, even if it's by ambulance, you would want to make sure you're in network just in case your insurance company cares and says, nope, that's not covered. Wrong hospital, wrong doctor, wrong clinic, wrong whatever. And we've done it before. We've made the mistake. And then you end up with a bill that insurance won't touch. So good insurance, knowing your network, knowing your deductible, those are all ways. You say, well, how do I get insurance? Well, you actually still can do the federal system. If you are of low income, you can check on that at healthcare.gov. That has been very controversial because it's a form of a socialist program, a welfare type program where everybody is forced to pay in and then you can pull out regardless of your history or anything else. But you can get into the debate about that. Does it encourage people to live unhealthy lifestyles? Does it encourage, and not avoid pre-existing conditions? And does it encourage people to not worry about getting a job to get insurance? Because I was going to say, full-time work, usually a lot of employers provide a health benefit as a result of that. So getting your good, affordable degree, getting a job, good paying job might give you that opportunity to have that health benefit, medical insurance. But anyway, the individual mandate, the tax penalty for that's been removed. So now that's not even there. And I'm not saying we need to bring back the full scope of Obamacare. I'm not trying to get into the debate of that. Just the point is, with medical prices so high, you and I may not be able to completely negotiate that as powerfully as an insurance company, let alone afford the bills. So sometimes insurance is the way to go. But you have to do what you have to do. I don't like being in debt. I don't want to owe a medical bill, but there are some strategies of dealing with it. The power of negotiation, having your insurance, and having some savings. Moving on, if we're talking about buying a car, well, again, I would suggest cutting the cost. Brand new, brand name is going to cost more in about every category. Keep that in mind. And a new car loses value, not just in the first day of driving off the lot, but in the first year. About 25% of its value, according to Edmunds.com. You might want to look at buying after year one. If you're going to sell it later, you want to make sure it's paid off so that your name is clear on the title, and then sell it before year 6, because it's going to take another depreciation nosedive. Though it's losing money every year in value. Cars depreciate. But that window between years 2 and 5 is sometimes your best time to buy and sell. We actually buy after year 6, so we get a further discount. So we don't have to have a car payment at all. We just have some cash. But have a little on reserve for repairs if you're going to do that, and have a mechanic close by. Otherwise, again, you might be able to buy a car at year 2, sell it before year 6, and get the most bang for your buck, right? If you're buying after it's lost a chunk of value, you're selling before it loses another big chunk of value. If you're buying a house, I would suggest, as I say in many areas of shopping, the secondary market, as I call it. I guess I made that up. They say that in the bond market sometimes. But what I mean by that is just like a used car. Well, you can also get a house that doesn't have to be brand new, overpriced. Construction costs are so high right now that your new houses are going to be a lot more expensive than a house already lived in. And if it's been lived in, it might be livable, but checking for mold and rodents and water damage and all those things you have to look for. By the way, my top suggestions on the house side of things is I would not buy it if there's a problem with the foundation, the roof, the electrical, perhaps the plumbing, and the heating and air furnace type situation. Those are your big 5 for house buying. And there are other things, other concerns. Like I said, any kind of remediation can be very expensive, like mold. Water drainage problems around the house that are going to lead to further problems later. That can be expensive. Any problems with the property lines, driveway access, and go on and on. I found out after I sold my house, I went back in the neighborhood. I just wanted to see what was going on with it. It had been back on the market. And the neighbor came up and told me that the lady that owned the property beside my house all those years, it was just a plot of wood. She didn't even have a house there. She finally got it cleared, but apparently she made a claim that she owned half my driveway, my former driveway. Yikes, nobody told me that. And therefore the shed that was on the property, I think. Anyway. So you want to make sure all that's clear when you buy. I buy foreclosures. I've bought 2 now, and I've lived in both. Been a good deal for me and cut a lot of cost. Again, anytime you're shopping, you cut costs, but having the savings to afford any surprises is important. And I'm not saying everyone should even buy when it comes to home ownership, because if you're going to be moving a lot, rent might be the better option. If your house is too high price in a high price market and hot market in the first place, you might want to wait for prices to go down, because you may not be able to sell it for what you paid if you decide you need to move or sell and get out of the mortgage. What if you're having to sell it for less than what you owe? Like, what happened to millions of people in 2008. That is a horrible situation to be in. So make sure that buying is right for you, that you've got savings, that you're finding a good deal, and that you're going to be there a while so that the house has a chance to pay itself off by saving on rent in the long term. Because if you're going to keep moving, you're going to continue to have closing costs that are going to pile on to what you're putting into this house, along with the interest you're paying on the mortgage. Of course, the big chunk of down payment that most people don't even have anymore. Most Americans don't even have $1,000 for an emergency, let alone a down payment for a house. But if you are thinking about buying, those are some considerations. And be ready for the hidden costs, like I said, with the closing fees and insurance and all the things and taxes, things like that are just rolled into rent. You don't notice those things until you have your own property. As far as education, I would say, believe it or not, you ought to compare colleges. There are some colleges that offer the same classes as the really expensive schools, same classes for half the cost or less. And to be fair, our community college, where I work, is half the cost of the university right down the road for the same first 2 years of classes. Now, the next years, to get a bachelor's, you'd have to move on to a university if you're planning to go that far. A lot of 2-year degrees pay as much or more than bachelor's if they're skilled degrees, but just some considerations there. So compare your costs again, just like we're saying with houses and cars and even medical, shopping for a hospital, doctor that's in-network, all those things that we've been saying in the last few minutes. Same thing in a sense for education. So, because again, if you cut your cost, you not only save on how much you have to borrow, you save on all the interest you were going to pay on that borrowing. Last but not least is shopping, the other big category of debt in our country, mainly through credit cards and other forms of financing. One of the things to watch out there is interest. Credit cards have some of the highest interest rates you could find in the debt market, it seems like. It can easily approach 20% or more on credit cards, and they can adjust the rate higher as the bank needs to. So credit cards, a personal loan might be around 5%, something like that, 5 or 6%, depending, of course, on your credit score and what bank you talk to and all of that. Our house mortgage right now is 4.25%. That's a fixed rate for the life of the loan. But that's already gone up to about 5% for people. Student loans, 5.29% or so, and that's going up probably each year. We'll see. Car payments can easily be 5 to 7%. So the interest rates are pretty moderate on most types of debt until you get to credit cards, and all of a sudden you're hitting in the 20s percentile. I'm paying about 16 to 17%, but they raised multiple times last year in 2018, and you just realize that you never want to carry a debt on a credit card because you're losing so much money, 20-something%, due to interest. So you pay it off at the end of each billing cycle before they charge you interest. Pay no fees, never late on a payment. So you're building your credit score. If you see something on your credit report or on your bank app, on your phone that wasn't your transaction, then question it and hopefully get it revoked as soon as possible so that you protect your credit history and your accounts. So those are just some tips. So basically with credit cards, you would never want to put anything on a credit card that you can't cover that month out of your income or out of savings, something like that. That's my suggestion. So some of the big things to watch out for: trips, restaurants, and then just random shopping. When you just go out and you just keep putting stuff in the cart, or of course online, the online cart. All of those, and especially bigger items like furniture and things too, but actually the little stuff adds up. Even fast food adds up after a while. If you're constantly eating out and you don't know how to buy just basic groceries and kind of sustain yourself, where you only eat out to treat yourself instead of it being your survival. That's part of the problem that ends up bankrupting people. When you're surviving on high-priced items like eating out all the time and paying for it with a credit card that you can't pay off when you get your paycheck, or worse yet, not even having a paycheck but still having a credit card to use, that bankrupts people. There was a stat that came out a few months ago where they're seeing a record number of seniors going bankrupt right now because they're actually paying their survival type bills, the utility bills and whatnot, on a credit card, and because they have these high student loan payments for themselves and their kids, and they can't do both. It's either eat or pay your debt. So some of them say, well, I'll just put my food on a credit card, and then they keep carrying that debt, and it keeps piling on the interest, and their minimum payment may be covering the interest, if that, but not hardly anything of the principal. It should cover some of the interest, but then you're not paying the debt down. And so credit card debt can be a real trap. While we're on the topic of risky debts, there is another type of debt that's 10 times worse than credit cards. I don't know if you've heard about it, but you'll see it anywhere you're driving. I think my phone is going off. But it's the whole small loan industry, the quick loans, where you just go to a little place and put your paycheck or your car title up, and then they give you money, and then they'll give your title back once you pay them back. The problem is, if you can't pay them back, you're looking at what would come out to possibly a 25% interest rate even a month, not a year like with a credit card. I mean, it is ungodly, unbelievable. Some believe it should be illegal, and it's so extreme and potentially predatory. It's easy money. They may even not check your credit score. Again, they'll take your car. They may take you to court. They may take money out of your bank account and mess with your credit and dig you a hole of debt. And some people will continue to do that kind of borrowing and just keep piling that up. And then with fees, late fees, and all this kind of stuff. And by the way, if they take your car, they still might take you to court, because if your car's not worth enough, that could be a challenge. Just think about those things and be careful. I got to stop for now. The phone's going, but be smart, especially when it comes to debt. Hey, babe. Sorry. Yeah, what's up?